what did you learn about Phil Knight from this project?
I learned a lot about Knight throughout the entirety of this project. I've always been a fan of Nike products, and so I've known a few vague facts about Nike. So him selling his shoes out of his car, and the sweatshop controversy. But I didn't know as much about Knight. And what surprised me about Knight and his leadership style is he's very focused on the employee. Through information that we've read and what we've learned through Kimberly's brother-in-law, who works at Nike in their headquarters, the company's very accommodating to the employees, whether it be them walking around in Nike clothes to be comfortable, or one example I have is when Nike first got started, he paid a college student, an artist, $25 to make the iconic swoosh logo. And since the brand grew and the swoosh became more and more recognizable on their IPO, he gave her shares of the stock, which grew to have a big value. So I thought that was very nice.
Yes, I think the most interesting thing for me as well is kind of how he founded Nike. But what is going to stick to me the most is how he used like aggressive marketing campaigns like to get these controversial sports leaders to promote Nike. And he even like started the huge chain of shoes and clothing like the Jordans. And that's a pretty big chain, and he also has like now the LeBron chain. So I think that's what's going to stick with me.
And Kobe and CP3.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff.
I think that the most surprising thing that I learned was that Phil Knight is actually an introvert. And like Phil Knight is the leader of this wildly successful company, and a company that just about everyone knows or has heard of at least. And
Worldwide.
yeah, I would kind of always assume that he would be an extrovert just based on that. And so, however, introverts can prove to be great leaders as they do spend more time listening and are more open to others' ideas. And I would definitely say that being an introvert hasn't stopped Phil from accomplishing his goals.
Yeah, so what type of leaders would you guys like to become based on what you've learned from this?
Well, looking at Phil, I have some similar personality traits. So I think it'd be more of a relaxed type leader, but also have some strictness. So I think it'd be more of a middle of the road manager.
On the leadership grid?
Yeah, on the leadership grid. An example we talked about, he's employee oriented. So he allowed the Nike employees to wear Nike clothing like in and around the office, and he also allowed them to like play sports at their corporate office. So I think if I was a leader or a CEO like that, then I would really want to have that type of engagement with the employees and the openness, I guess.
In the future, I think I would want to hopefully become a transformational leader. I would really hope that I would inspire and excite my followers to achieve high levels of performance and doing their personal best. And I would also hope to motivate my employees to go and above and beyond what they think is possible, and ideally have employees that are happy working for me.
Yeah. I mean, for me, just based on like Lewin studies, I'd want to be a combination of autocratic and democratic. So I want my employees to have a say in where the company's headed, but I also, just the type of personality I am, I like structure, so I'd like to have that as well. So I think if there's a way to combine that, that's how I'd go. But so what would you guys have done differently than Knight?
I think I would have bought a bigger hangar for my private jet. Otherwise, not too much. The only thing I would have done different is probably handle the media situation with the sweatshops. I know during one of his interviews, he asked, they were going to bring him out to a sweatshop, and he didn't even know where it was. So he, I guess, just isn't that aware of what's going on. And he didn't handle it very well with the media. But otherwise, there's like nothing else that would have changed if I was Phil Knight.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Matt. I definitely probably would have tried to have found an alternative to the whole sweatshop situation. I mean, even though like the foundation for Nike was based on that paper he wrote while he was still in school, with the idea that low wages in Asian countries for like a high quality product. And that has obviously proven wildly successful for Nike, but it's still kind of like icky. And
yeah, this goes into the ethical part, the next question.
Mm-hmm.
how this was kind of the only unethical thing that he's done, and it's the only thing, so it doesn't totally ruin his reputation, and he's still very much ethical. Do you want to talk about yours first, though, before we get back?
Yeah, were you finished?
Yeah, and I just think that Phil Knight is such a creative and innovative individual that he definitely could have come up with a better solution.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I think you guys both touched that. For me, what I would have done differently, I think it's clear that Knight's a charismatic leader, and he created a strong culture in Nike. But I haven't seen much personal enactment from him. We've looked everywhere, and
No.
we can't find examples of him just getting one-on-one with employees or going to like events like that designed to help the employees. And if I were a leader, I'd be different. I'd choose to do that differently. I think it's important to have interaction with your employees, and it helps motivate them. And so that's what I would do differently. But continue your thoughts on the ethics, the next part.
Yeah, so basically the only unethical thing was the sweatshops and kind of how he handled it. It wasn't very well, but he's still very much so an ethical person, human. I have the fact that people should focus on this positive part. An example being he recently donated $500 million for cancer research. So I think that's pretty big.
Which isn't a small chunk of change.
For him, maybe.
Yeah, no, and like going off that, I really just think that like in the beginning stages of Nike, he was so heavily invested in that. Like Nike was his baby, and that he just wanted to do whatever it took to succeed. And now, obviously, with all the negativity that surrounded that whole sweatshop situation, Nike has mandatory labor and sustainability standards for all of their manufacturers throughout the world. And they also conduct mandatory factory inspections from an outside group. So
that's gotten better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like he's transformed his company now. He's not able to focus just on cash flow. He has bigger priorities. I agree with you guys. I think he's an ethical leader for the most part. So what I looked at were the 3 criteria for ethical decision making. So competence, self-confidence, and tough-mindedness. So Knight he's known for being highly competitive and confident in himself. He expressed this right away when he was selling shoes out of the back of his car. I mean, he was confident in his product, confident in his skills, and he got the company going. Competence, I guess the other thing, tough-mindedness. What that is like you're able to make a decision without knowing the full future. And when Knight started, he was using a Japanese manufacturer's shoes, and the U.S. Customs 5 years later, once Nike was making $25 million, or was a $25 million company, they charged him $25 million fees and back taxes, which would have wiped out the entire revenue, had potential to bankrupt the company.
Yeah.
But obviously you can't foresee that going into this.
Mm-hmm.
And Knight was able to handle it. He got other shoe companies to back him. They were able to eradicate the loophole and really change the environment.
Yeah, he didn't give up.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, but I agree. I think he's ethical. He's made a mistake, but all of us have, and so let's come back from it. Night vision.
So Leo, what do you think is the most significant thing you've learned about Phil Knight from doing this project?
Well, what I learned most was I did not know Phil Knight was an introvert prior to this project. I mean, it amazes me that he was able to build a great company and articulate his vision with his hard work and talent. I mean, he has quiet confidence. He's confident in himself, and I always thought that CEOs were naturally extroverts, but he kind of breaks the trend, which was nice because I would consider myself an introvert myself.
Oh, it's very interesting. I would say that his competitive nature really, not surprised me, because obviously someone who creates such a company is so competitive, but that really impressed me. So because of his drive and his competitive nature, he remained CEO until 2005, so he could have that control and make those decisions. So I think what I liked best about Phil Knight was that he never kind of pushed off the work, pushed off the responsibility of Nike. He held fast to that, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's very neat. I mean, do you have any qualities that you learned or type of you might want to become after this project?
Yeah, I mean, I recognized how invested he was in the organization that he worked for, Nike. I really want to be focused like that. I want to care about where I'm working. I'd also like to be the kind of leader who builds strong teams. That being said, when it comes to leadership in the workplace, I think it's more important to keep the organization focused on the task at hand. So things that Matt was talking about, that he tends to prefer, like kicking a soccer ball around or wearing goofy clothes, I think that gets in the way of getting work done. I like to separate work and play and focus more on an authority and compliance-based leadership style with a focus on team management. You know? What about you? What would you say?
I agree. I think you have some valid points. I mean, I would like to emulate Phil Knight and how he's a charismatic leader, and he's also a relationship-oriented style, and I like that because when he meets with all the athletes he signs, he meets with them one-on-one and gets to know them on a personal level, and tries to make it seem like they're his only client, which I think is neat, and it's positive, and it builds good rapport between him and his clients, and that's part of the reason why he's been successful. He's a great listener. As I mentioned, he was an introvert.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. What would you, of all the things he's done as a leader, what would you have done differently?
I would be a little more cautious in endorsing every controversial athlete. I mean, he stood by Kobe Bryant. I'm not sure I would have done that. I mean, all the publicity, I guess, is good in a way, but it could backfire. I mean, prime example is recently Oscar Pistorius. Before he shot his girlfriend, there was a Nike ad that said he was like, I'm the bullet in the chamber, which was ironic considering the situation.
Yeah, quite a coincidence. I mean, I think personally that it's hard to assess a leader's decisions because you can't really get a full understanding of everything that he has to consider. So I think it's risky to criticize such successful people like Phil Knight. So in my opinion, I wouldn't really change any decisions he made, mostly because I can't really know. If I was in his situation, I'd like to hope that I can make the right decision. And I think he did a good job.
Yeah, I mean, we can never put ourselves in his shoes exactly.
Yeah, and when it comes to the ethics of Phil Knight, I think that's a good point. I'd agree with you on who he chooses to sponsor, especially because he removed his sponsorship from Lance Armstrong for cheating, because that's directly related to sports, but he doesn't care if a person who he sponsors is a good person or not. A good person or not. What would you say about ethics?
I mean, I think Knight is an ethical leader. He is socially responsible. He donates to many philanthropy causes. I mean, also to the educational institutions that he attended, University of Oregon and Stanford. I'd say the only blemish on his resume is the Nike sweatshop, but he's worked to clean that image up.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Thanks, Leo. This concludes our presentation on Phil Knight. We hope that you have learned as much as we have. Thank you.
Yeah, I think LeBron's part was the best.
Night Vision out.